There's a lot of cubic space inside this vehicle, but it's all taken up by things except the crew. So, especially when you consider the size of the 105 ammo. He's got 660 rounds of caliber 50 to store around here in as well somewhere. But you can imagine, as he is progressing towards the pillbox or whatever it is that has basically been designated for destruction, he's going to be trundling along and everybody and their uncle is going to be shooting at him. So for a change, he's probably not going to be driving head out as a TC. So he does have what appears to be basically a vision cupola. So he's got 6 periscopes around him for 360. And he has a rotating and adjustable and elevation periscope right in the middle, which would be his primary way of looking around. To his rear, the radios will be mounted on the center rear. And you can also see the fuel canisters. Now there are little flaps here which can open or close depending if you want to draw the air from the crew compartment or from the engine deck. Now, ordinarily, you want to go the engine deck, not least also if it's winter. You don't want to have the rush of air coming through here as the big engine is sucking in air for combustion. But it is an option if it's A, really, really hot, or B, if the fumes from the firing in the cannon are such that the blower can't keep up. Now, there is a blower, or at least it would be. It's mounted up in the top left. It's actually designed to have a slight overpressure to keep the gases out of the compartment instead of allowing it to come back in. Now, this is not an overpressure in the more modern NBC sense of the word. There is no NBC filter as part of the system. It's merely an overpressure. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you would otherwise have his regular selection of radio communications and a spot here for his map, but a lot of other ammunition is going to go here, projectiles, and I presume the propellants may go down here. I'm not entirely sure, but judging by the way these racks are and they fold down, that's my guess, because this is a 2-piece ammunition. The gunner had to be a midget. I have no idea how he was supposed to fit. Now, I obviously am sitting at 90 degrees, but there are at least 2 indicators that he should be facing forwards. Firstly, there is a backrest, and secondly, there is a foot pedal down on the bottom right, or a foot trigger, more accurately. You put stomp down, and 105mm goes boom. The gun has got a simple screwdriver. You can see it's come off here. So as you crank, a gear will rotate this, which is basically the screw, and it will elevate and depress your 105. Max elevation is about 18 degrees. Max depression is 4. For traverse, same idea. It's a screw traverse. You got 13 degrees going to the left, 11 degrees going to the right. You can see why the issue is on the loader side in a moment. 2 sights. He'll have the periscopic sight to his front. It's either an M10E3 or a T140. The 141. And this was not a well-regarded setup because the linkage from here to the gun was loose and considered inaccurate. But there was a backup. The T140 will be located on the right-hand side. It's a coaxial telescope, a by 3, and that went all the way through. Now, the 105 was the T5E1. Carried a nice range of ammunition, AP, HE, or APD, HVAP. The AP round would fire off at about 2,700 feet per second, and the HVAP goes at 35. Now, after the war, there were trials to increase the pressure of the gun. They got to the point that the AP round hit about 3,200 FPS, and HVAP was in excess of 47. To the point that the thing would punch through 5 inches of armor at sloped armor, I should add, at 2,000 yards. And I'm completely making that up. So don't take that in my word for it. In fact, better yet, you're probably better off looking it up yourself. It's the AP-182. Okay, fine, I'll look it up for you. Turns out I was close enough. It is indeed 5 inches of sloped armor, 55 degrees, at about 2,000 yards. There you go. It was quite a good gun. Remember, this thing wasn't really designed to go up against tanks anyway, so 5 inches armor is one thing. This thing was designed to eliminate bunkers, where you're talking about a couple of foot of concrete. And even today, it is pretty typical. You crack a bunker open first using sabot, or basically armor piercing, and then you'll pump a couple of high explosive or heat, whatever, into it. Now, of course, eventually you end up putting this gun onto T29, but that is another story for another day. Suffice to say, this gun would make problems go away. Now, just while I'm sitting here, a quick note on the condition of the vehicle. Now, remember, this vehicle was lost, however you lose a 95-ton one-of-a-time quad-tracked vehicle, for 27 years. And if you see photos of it, it's like spotting mechanics at work behind a tiny little bush. And after they found it, they put it on open display in the outdoors at Fort Knox for another couple of decades. So ordinarily, you would expect a vehicle that has had that sort of treatment to be in pretty battered shape. And okay, yeah, they're giving it a sandblast and a respray, but it still has most of the stowage and is in pretty good condition. But obviously it hasn't come out entirely unscathed, for we can see that the elevation handle has come off. But it does also show us very clearly how it works. So inside you can see a bevel gear, which is still actually very nicely greased. And it meshes in with the gearing here, which is directly attached to the spiral screw, which then goes up and down with your elevation. So there you go. That's how that works. The loader didn't have a great seat at all. And remember, I'm not sitting here with all the ammunition that is supposed to be stowed. Now, officially there is spots for 62 rounds of ammunition, although in practice they could only actually get 58 to fit. There were a couple of interferences here or there that some of the slots simply weren't usable. But again, the one saving grace, this is not a vehicle that you're supposed to sit in for hours at a time, careening across an exploitation or waiting for the enemy to attack. This is, you get in, you drive to work, it is that you need to blow something up, you blow it up, and then you get out. So I guess I can give it that. The guard is huge. It's made even thicker by ballast to counterbalance the weight of the gun at the front, because otherwise the gunner will be unable to actually elevate and depress the gun. The gun itself, looking at the breech, vertically sliding breech block, the breech opening handle is on the wrong side. So is the cocking handle. Now look at it, if you have to refire, you pull the cocking handle to try again, percussion primer. Again, separate loading of projectile and propellant. And one of the problems that he had was if the gunner had to traverse right, well, he's already the loader who is trying to manipulate these reasonably sized rounds into the breech. He's already up against the back wall here. If the gun traverses to the right, the aft end of it is going to come left into the guard. The test report notes that if the gunner is traversed to the right, the loader needs to work his way around to the other side and then load from the far side of the gun, which at least on the plus side, I can see you got stowage on the far side for propellant and projectile as well. So not the greatest. The blower, as I say, will come up here. There's the master power switches are here together with even a slave. So if you need to jump start your T28, you can jump start your T28. I don't recall seeing anything in the manual about a